This is not SEO strategy. This is not a replacement for an SEO manager. This is how do you get your marketing website to a base level. Like, you can't operate without these kinds of things. So let's go into URL structure first. This is so important. It is your spine of your website, if you will. So you want to protect it. So my first bullet is actually going to be probably controversial. I personally take the stance of avoiding redirects at all costs. Of course, you're going to have to do redirects at some point. But what I'm saying is, at the very start, you should be strategizing your URLs so that you don't have to use redirects. You shouldn't have to lean on them to fix your mistakes. You should be avoiding those mistakes in the first place. So that's what I mean. You will have to use redirects at some point. 301s when you're getting rid of pages or they have changed, so that now we've got to, we got to change the strategy. So sometimes that is unavoidable. Of course, you want your URLs to be simple and readable. They are just as much for humans as they are for robots and machines. So really make those clear, concise. Put your hyphens between words. Don't put it all in one long string of random characters. That's no fun for robots or humans to parse through. And avoid duplicate content, because you do get penalized for that. So here's an example of some simple URLs, right? This is really clear. It's the resources page. It's the getting started underneath the tags. So we have a tagging structure apparently. We've got a blog with the title in there with the keywords that we're going after in those, and they're hyphenated so that you can actually read each word individually. Headings. These are really important, especially with accessibility in mind. You should have one H1 on every page. You shouldn't have no more, and you should have no less. You really do need to have one. You could argue the fact of having multiple H1s on your website, but for marketing websites, there's almost zero use cases. I have never seen a good use case for using more than one H1. So it's just so much easier, so much more clean and organized when you just use one H1. Make sure it's on there, because that's really important. And the last thing is using the headings in your logical sequence. This is so important. Don't choose which heading tag you're using just based on the size that you want. So I actually have a video all about this, about how you've been lied to about your H1s, H2s, H3s, etc. And I definitely recommend you go checking that out, just because it really is a huge problem with accessibility, and it makes things so much easier, it makes so much more sense when you just follow it the way that they were intended to be used. Okay, metadata, the classic. This is what the technical SEO is about, getting those title tags, your meta tags, all of that first part, that's as close to as you can get to controlling your listing in the search engine results page, SERP. Here's a title tag and meta description. You can see I pulled these straight from my website, so you can see how it correlates to that search engine results page. If you throw in my website into Google, you might see this, you might not. It might be a little bit different depending on your keywords, depending on the page, and depending on whether or not the search engine is deciding to honor what you have in the title and the description. For the most part, they do honor what you put in there as your description and your titles. This is such an important detail, to have the social media be consistent. We want to have good images in there when we are sharing links. We want to be able to control that rather than forcing the social media venue to just go out, scrape whatever the first image it finds, which usually is your logo, and it makes it all kinds of weird cropping and just a bad experience. Doesn't look very good. And you can also, again, influence the title and the description that you see in the preview itself for those links. Here's a little snippet of my personal snippet that I always use. Again, I do have a video that goes through this, and so I definitely encourage you to check that out. Your favicon is an important detail that can get missed if you're just rushing. So definitely make sure you've got something there. It's going to be in the tabs of your browser. It may end up on the search engine results page. It could end up on bookmarks and other places that you may not expect to see it. So it is really important to have it in there rather than having some generic, whatever the browser generic one is. All right, so server details. These are going to be really technical, but they're really, really important to make sure that your server is set up right. So we're going to go over these. First, obviously, you want to have HTTPS. It doesn't actually make you that much more secure, especially if your coding is bad or you have some vulnerabilities, but it's really important to at least have that as a base for creating some trust, making sure that you're using a secure connection. Robots.txt, this is an important detail that rarely gets talked about. This is something every single website needs because it helps you customize the experience that search engine crawlers have with your website, because sometimes you might have sections of the site that you don't want those to be touched. That's what this disallow statement is here in this example. It helps you, discover your sitemaps. It's a really good tool, kind of scary sometimes if you can make some mistakes. So this one is an important one to get right and to study, but this is something that you need to have. Even if it is just blank and it just says user agent is star, you do need to have this just so that you can be ready for when you're ready for those more complicated interactions with search engine crawlers. All right, so sitemaps. This one is really important as well, and this one often gets overlooked. You need at least an XML sitemap. That's what this is right here, where we've got the pages, we've got the links, we've got some our last modification date, how frequently it's being changed, the priority of it as far as its importance. And this is an important thing for helping Google or Bing or whatever search engine to understand what the content is on your website. And if you feel so inclined, you can also double it up and have an HTML version as well, so that it helps users to be able to explore your website if that's something that makes sense to you. This is a very much overlooked opportunity. Error pages, you really don't want to have it looking like this when you have an error 404, whether that's because something broke on your site or somebody typed in a weird character in the URL or whatever. They're going somewhere that they shouldn't be or is no longer valid. This is not the best experience to find that. So anytime you can do a custom error page, definitely take advantage of it. This is something really cool as well for marketing, to think through the user journey, because you don't want to have dead ends in your website, and 404 is definitely a dead end. But if you look at something like this, we have a couple of links. We have go to the front page as an example of some step that somebody could take if they go to my site on a 404 page, or they have some other blogs that they could check out as well. And so you could get more custom with this, and it's really important to make sure those details help people to get unstuck, because the 404 page is a hard place to end up. And even if they just end up backing out, it's still nice to have those extra CTAs just to help people move along. The user experience is a huge part of SEO, and Google has made this pretty clear with how it tracks on the search console, analytics, all of that. It's very clear that they are prioritizing websites that are just covering the basis of good user experience. Accessibility is huge. Please learn all you can about it. I have some playlists of me going over some experiments with voiceover, for example, as you see here in this screenshot. But I'm also really interested in finding other ways to make the experience of a website a lot easier to handle when you're using devices, or if you just need extra help to understand the content that's going on, whether that's because of a disability or even just other limitations. It's totally unfair to just ignore that side of things and to assume that everybody can read that small text, or that they can understand your images, things like that. There's no reason to exclude people on the web, and we should be making an effort to make sure that our websites are as solid as possible and makes a great experience for anybody regardless of ability. And of course, the obvious one is responsiveness. You want to be able to have your website work on a mobile phone, on a tablet, those in-between sizes, kind of weird browser sizes as well. Make sure that's part of your baseline, right? Make sure you're testing that on every design, on every new change. Make sure that that's something that's going to be positive for people. And performance, that's going to be huge. There's a couple of tools you can use. All of these are for free. If you're using, this is Google Search Console for my website, you can see that there's some things that need to be worked on with the design. that's a good way to monitor in it because it surfaces these issues for you. You can also, of course, use Lighthouse, which is in the Chrome developer tools, and there's a lot of other tools out there that will do similar things of just checking to make sure that you're on track with your load times, your accessibility, if you've got all of the bases covered. And that's a great thing to be auditing your site with frequently. So obviously this last section is more of an ongoing kind of a thing, and you can't put off your launch of your website until this stuff is perfect, because otherwise you'll never launch, and that's no good. So instead, let's focus on building up the skills that you'll need to take your website into the future. And well, you can start right here with learning about headings, heading levels, how you're actually supposed to use them, and how you may have been lied to about how you should be using those.